Want to know how to back a trailer like a pro? My name is Danny Crisp, and I've helped nearly 350 people get their Class A CDL backing exam knocked out. And in this Backing 101 class, I'm going to teach you the 4 skills I teach them to help you back a trailer with confidence. Remember, when applying to Prime, if you found these videos helpful, please make certain to use my name and code as your driver referral in the application box. Let's do this together. Now stay tuned and figure out how to back that trailer with a plan. Okay, very excited to be getting to this Backing 101 video. Now this is a video I've been wanting to put out for a very long time, not only to help students who are interested in getting their Class A CDL, but also anybody who might be interested in learning how to back a trailer, the basic fundamentals of it. So we're going to go over what I call the 4 skills system. These 4 skills we can use in any scenario, and they will help us solve every situation we could possibly have with a truck and trailer. The only thing that's different about how we use these 4 skills is the degree of the cut that we're going to use, how big is that cut going to be, and the duration of that cut. So how long are we going to leave that in before we get back straight with the trailer? And this is what I call tailoring it. We want to tailor it to the situation we're in. As we're going to see here in a moment, a 90-degree alley dock is a lot different than a 5-degree straight line back. We want to make sure that we're tailoring our response to what our problem is. As I tell students, you want to make sure to first evaluate what's my problem, then diagnose what's my solution, and then try to execute it to the best of your ability by tailoring it. Now before we get into the specifics of those 4 skills, let's talk a little bit about the different types of trailers. As we can see here, personal vehicles, you're going to be backing sometimes boat trailers, sometimes a jet ski trailer. You're going to notice that these are shorter trailers and their pivot points are relatively close to the vehicle that you're backing. And what this means is it's going to move laterally a lot faster. A small pivot point that's close to the vehicle you're backing is going to run left and right very, very fast. So we have to be careful with those smaller cuts because it can what's called jackknife very quickly. Now when we're in a combination vehicle for a Class A CDL exam or driving a Class A vehicle, we're going to see tankers, flatbeds, and reefer units or box trailers. Now these are all a little bit different. A tanker is going to be a little bit shorter and its axles are together. So the pivot point is smaller, which means because it's shorter and because its axles are together, it's going to run laterally a little bit faster. These flatbeds, they're going to be a little bit shorter typically, but not always, than these refrigerated units or these box trailers. But their axles are very often spread apart, which means their pivot point, as we can see right here, is wider, which means it's going to move laterally a little slower because those 2 axles fight against each other as it backs, which makes it move laterally slower. So it's a little easier to back when you're just starting out because you can watch it develop slowly. It doesn't run as fast as when these trailer tires are close together, as we can see with the sliding tandem on a box trailer or a refrigerated unit, or with our tanker here. So to summarize, we want to think about how we're going to be tailoring it, and that has everything to do with how long is the trailer and how big is our pivot point in the back. If we have a smaller pivot point and a shorter trailer, it's going to run laterally very fast. So we want to be prepared for that and make sure that our degrees and our durations reflect that. Now typically, when we think about backing a trailer, a smaller cut over a longer distance will do about the same thing as a big cut over a short distance. But we like those smaller cuts over longer distances better because they're a lot easier to control and to predict. We can see the difference in variance between 2-3 degrees a lot easier than we can the difference in variance between 10, 15, 20 degrees as that accelerates. So smaller cuts over longer distances are typically a little bit easier. Now I know this all sounds very cerebral, but it's pretty intuitive. The big question is, how big of a cut do I put in that truck and trailer? And how long do I leave it in? And we want to tailor that based on what is it that we need. Are we doing a 90? Are we doing a 45? Or are we doing something closer to a 5, which we'll see here in a second. So now that we have a better understanding of how the axles play a role in the length of our trailer, let's get into the 4 skills. All right, so as we can see right here, this is the 4 skills system that I was talking about. Now, these 4 skills will solve every single situation you could possibly be in. The only difference is how big of a cut and how long do I leave it in. Now, 2 of these skills go backwards, but you'll notice 2 of these skills, these bottom 2 here, those go forwards. Now, we got to remember in a combination vehicle, how you set yourself up is almost as important as the back itself. That whole setup is going to make that back easy or very difficult. So pulling up needs to be strategic. So we'll talk about those pull-ups here in a second. But first, let's talk about the ways in which we back up. Now, there are typically 2 scenarios when you're backing. You either like the position your trailer is in and you want to keep it in that position by chasing flush, or you do not like the position that your trailer is in. As we can see right here, we're pointed a little crooked and we need to fix that before we can begin to chase flush. So we're either staying in front of our trailer because we like it, or we're fixing our trailer because we do not like it. Now, chasing flush in a flatbed trailer, there's typically a marker light on the front corner that we can use as a reference point to help us know when the truck and trailer is straight. And typically past the fairing on the corner of the truck, if we see just a third of that marker light, we know, okay, the truck and trailer is straight. If we're seeing too much of that light, then we need to make sure and be steering right in order to get back in front of that trailer, because the trailer is running right if we're seeing too much of that light. Conversely, if we're seeing too little or hardly any or none at all, we need to steer left to get back in front of that trailer, because at that point the trailer is running left. Now, these are arbitrary reference points that I use on the trailers that we back, but any reference point on your trailer will work. You just have to figure out what that is, and it's a very simple process. You pull forward 15-20 foot in that trailer. At that point, once you've gone 15-20 foot, that trailer is straight behind you, and when it is, you can look in your mirror and see what that trailer looks like, and you want to keep it in that position to stay straight. So as you're backing, if you're starting to see more of that trailer than you had in that position, that means that trailer's running right and you need to steer right. Conversely, if you're seeing less of that, then you can mark it with an X, you can put a sticker on it. If you're seeing less of that, then you need to start to steer left because your trailer is running left. So that's an easy way to make sure that you're staying straight with your trailer when you like your trailer's position. You simply just chase flush. If you're seeing too much of that, steer right. If you're seeing not enough, steer left. So that's how we stay straight when we like our trailer's position. So let's head out into the field and take a look at what that looks like. Okay, as we are starting to back, we are in a great position with our truck and trailer being straight with that line, and we're just monitoring our flush point. As we start to see a little too much light here, we're going to steer right. Leave that small cut in, watch it develop, and eventually we're going to start to see too little light, so we're going to need to steer left with that small controlled cut. We're letting it develop, leaving it in. And as we monitor our trailer, we're starting to see a little too much light again. So we're going to steer right here to get ourselves back to a flush position. Again, we're using these small controlled cuts. Start to see no light, we're steering a little left to get ourselves back to flush and letting it develop. Remember to tailor your solution to your problem with those small controlled cuts. Eventually you can straighten your steers at your flush position to monitor and adjust to your trailer. And if you need help finding flush on your particular trailer, again, remember to refer back to how to find flush a little earlier in the video here. Okay, so pretty straightforward stuff. Chasing flush, we're just keeping that marker light in a specific position so we can stay in front of our trailer when we like our trailer. Now, what if we don't like our trailer? Sometimes we're in a position where we are clearly off center and we need to fix that trailer's position. And this is what I call the 1, 2, 3. First, we need to look at our trailer and go, okay, what is my problem? I need to evaluate. It looks like I need the back of that trailer to go left. So step 1 is I'm going to steer right in order to point your trailer. Now we're going to leave that cut in, watch it develop, and then when we start to get our trailer to straighten up, we need to do step 2, get back flush with that trailer or straight with that trailer, because we like that trailer's position and we want to keep it in that position. Now once we get back to straight with that truck and trailer, that third step is we want to straighten out our steers. So first we point our trailer, then when we like it, we get back flush, and once we're flush, we straighten out our steers and start that entire process over again. So let's head onto the field and get a look at what that looks like, the 1, 2, 3. All right, as we can see right here, we are set up to the left of the box that we are aiming for, and we're going to need our trailer to point left to get into that box. So we're going to put a little cut into the right. Step 1, point your trailer. You can see we did about a half a rotation right here with our steers, and we're leaving that in to let it develop. You want to leave those cuts in at least a few feet to watch to see what they're doing. If we continually change the angle of the steers, we're not going to be able to predict the angle very effectively. So as we left that in, we start to see, okay, it's about time for us to do step 2. As that trailer's getting straight, we want to get back straight with it by getting flush. We steered left to get back flush, and once we were flush, we do step 3, stop and straighten out our steers. At this point, we look pretty good, pointed into the box cleanly, so we can just begin to chase flush. As we're backing, if we start to see too much light, we can steer a little right, and if we start to see no light, we can steer a little left. Remember to be using those small cuts. Okay, so there we have an example of a 1, 2, 3 that lands pretty good for us. So those are both of our backward moving skills. Now, what if we land a little poorly though on that 1, 2, 3? Maybe we get in front of it a little bit too early and so we're pointed too much at our blind side, or maybe we get in front of it a little too late and we're pointed, just like here, too much to our sight side. Now, it's a pretty easy fix as long as we are strategic and we have a plan. First, we want to ask ourselves, before we decide how to pull up, do I like where the trailer tires are as far as being centered? And here I do. Over here I can see I do not, so it's going to require a different sort of pull-up. But in this situation, I do like where the tires are. I'm just crooked. I'm in front of the box. I'm just crooked. If I find myself in that situation, then I want to be very strategic about my pull-up and pull up with a directional reset to just simply reset the direction that I'm pointed. Now, this is where a lot of early drivers get into a little bit of trouble because they try to use a car habit here. And that won't work for a combination vehicle. In a car, if you saw this, you'd see a big gap to the right and your brain would say, I better pull up to the right to move this vehicle back in front of the box. But that's not going to work on a combination vehicle. Here we actually need to pull up towards the side that we're pointed too much at. And we're going to do it with 2 deliberate consecutive cuts. First, we're going to pull up towards that side we're pointed too much at. In this situation, it's to the left to point our trailer back over to the right. And then we're going to get back flush. So it's 2 consecutive cuts to straighten ourselves out back in front of this box. So let's head out into the field and get a look at this directional reset to the sight side. All right, as we can see right here, we got in front of our trailer a little bit late and we were pointed too much to the sight side. So we are going to pull up to the left, to the side we were pointed too much at. In order to do step 1, point your trailer. We're pulling up left to point our trailer right. Now we're leaving that cut in for just a little bit, tailoring it because we didn't need a huge adjustment, and we're steering right to get back flush. That's our second cut. We're trying to sync up the moment that we're straight with the trailer when that trailer is straight with that line. And from here we just straighten our steers and chase flush out the box. All right, so there we saw a good example, directional reset out in the real world. Very simple and very efficient. This is probably the most important tool you're going to have in the toolbox as an early operator because you can fix the direction of the trailer in just 8-10 foot. And sometimes that's all you have out at shippers and receivers. So it's a great way to be very efficient with your pull-up to fix your trailer's position. Now, in this situation, we saw we liked where our trailer was, but we didn't like the direction it was pointed. Sometimes we just don't like where our trailer is. We are not in front of that box, and we have to use what's called a serpentine. So a serpentine, first we're going to evaluate where are we. We can see a big gap here, and we are blocking the cone or the wall here. So we need to first move our trailer back in front of the box. So we're going to pull up to the right to move our trailer over. Now, as we do that, because we're in a combination vehicle, we're going to be pointing very hard to the left. And so we're going to need to do an additional turn to point that trailer the correct direction. So we're going to pull up to the left to then point the back of the trailer over to the right. And then that final cut is to get back flush. So it's 3 consecutive turns. First, we move the trailer in front of the gap or the box that we want to be in front of. Then we point the trailer back by pulling up the opposite direction, and then we get back flush. Now, where most drivers have the biggest problem with this is this second turn. And that's because when we're coming back up to the left, it looks very, very confusing because we're at an angle and we're blocking the side where we're pulling up towards, and your instinct is to get out of that cut early. but you have to be patient with that cut. You got to remember, it's going to look wrong until it looks right, and then it's going to look just right. So be patient with your second cut on your serpentine. So let's head out into the field and get a look at a serpentine pull-up correction. All right, as we can see right here when we evaluate looking at our mirrors, we have a big gap on the right, and on the left we are blocking that cone. So we're going to need to first do step one, move our trailer by pulling up to the right. We've cycled into drive and we're pulling up about 10 or 15 foot, enough time to move that trailer over a little bit. At which point we'll do step two, start steering left in order to point our trailer back to the right. We leave that cut in about the same amount of time, 10 to 15 foot, before we do step three, steer right to get back flush. At that point we should be set up pretty good in front of the box, and from here we can just tailor it with a 1, 2, 3 or chase flush as needed. Okay, so there we saw a serpentine out in the field, what that looks like. We moved our trailer, we pointed our trailer, and we got back in front of our trailer. So as promised, all four of these skills, when used correctly by tailoring it, will solve every single problem you can have. But as a young operator, sometimes you don't do a great job tailoring it, and that's totally normal. Remember to be patient with yourself, be patient with your instructor, and the nice thing about these four skills is if we do kind of a mediocre job on our 1, 2, 3 or our directional reset, we can fix it with another 1, 2, 3 or another directional reset. We are either winning or we're learning. So in every scenario, we're coming out better than we were before. And that's all we can hope for. We want each rep to make the next rep a little bit better. So there we have the four skills. Now let's talk a little bit about the degree over duration that I mentioned in that first section. Okay, so a brief note about tailoring it. As we can see on the board here, we have three very different scenarios, and we're going to need very different approaches. Now, the degree of cut we're going to need in a 90 is much more significant than the degree of cut we're going to need in a 45 or a 5, but the concepts are basically the same. We need to first point our trailer over to the left by steering to the right. Then we need to start to steer left to get back in front of it when that trailer's got a good push in it. And then finally, we're going to straighten out our steers right here. So the concepts are the same. Again, right here, I need to push my trailer left, so I'm going to steer right. The degree of the cut is not going to be as significant as it was on that 90, but again, we're going to eventually steer left to get back flush and then straighten out our steers when we're in the box. And the same thing goes for that 5-degree fix of a straight line back. We're going to need to point our trailer left, so we're going to steer a little right. It's obviously going to be a much smaller cut than these two, and we're going to be taking it out a little bit earlier, but the concepts are the same. So as you become more and more comfortable backing, you realize we are essentially just doing the same 3 steps, pointing our trailer, getting back in front of it, and straightening out our steers over and over and over again. Now, this is a 101 approach to backing, so there is definitely more advanced ways we can push our trailer. At some point, we'll get to a place where we realize we don't actually get flush, but we waggle in and out of pointing it, almost getting in front of it, pointing it, almost getting in front of it. This process is how we can read our trailer over time or move it laterally while we point it. And that's something you're going to get better and better at as you develop it. But while you were starting out, this is a very simple way to approach it until you get a good understanding of the processes of backing a combination vehicle. So there we have it, guys, the 4-skill system, degree over duration. We want to tailor it the best we can, and if we end up missing a little bit, no problem, we can use one of our pull-up corrections to fix it. So it either lands really well and we love it, or we get an opportunity to learn one of our 4 skills a little bit more. So there you have it, guys. Same stuff as always. Like, comment, and share to anybody you think would find this material helpful. Drive safe, drive smart. Until next time. I didn't know you were going. All right, we good? There's no ink in this marker. Okay. Okay, so that's how we... And on this one, we're going to land a little crooky on purpose to do a directional reset.